Jesus said to the disciples, "You have heard that it was said, 'An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth.' But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also." When Jesus says, "An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth," he is mirroring the prophets of old, and in this case, Moses. So in a way, he's saying, I'm aware of the old traditions and teachings, and by extension, going to take those words and update them. The words of the Torah no longer serve justice, and Jesus recognizes that. So he's saying we need to update it. We've gone past those days type of thing. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. Here, he's speaking to the spirit power one has when someone tries to take from you. Think about it in the context of what is going to drive you insane. What is going to change and transform you to turn to hate? He is saying they can take everything from you, and you can still retain your nature. This is what they cannot take from you. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. So here, you almost have to think of Jesus as like an athlete who had been training for this. In a world where they are forcing you to do things, go the extra mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Now, we have to remember the conditions of the world in which he was teaching. Try to imagine intense living conditions, poverty, chaos, mass migration, things moving at an insanely fast rate, people, children being left behind, a world where people were seeking a way forward. You have heard that it was said, you must love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. So this line is interesting because it starts out, you have heard that it was said. So it starts out as kind of information that has been going around. People are telling each other about this, telling each other about that. People are telling you how you are to deal with these things, giving you updates. This is how we are to now act, etc., etc. So it's in this context where people are given kind of a script on how to go about living their lives, say by the authorities or governmental powers. And it's good advice. I mean, I'll give them a little credit. They do say, love your neighbor. But they also say you are to hate your enemies. And on this point is where we can begin to see some separation. Jesus' teaching is not the same as the message you would get from your everyday guy just trying to go about life as how things should be. So long as the checks keep coming in, we will do whatever you want kind of thing. So the message of the teaching is to take it beyond this level to the next level where, hey man, we got some serious stuff going on here. We can't just sit around and pretend like everything is all good just because things may be looking fine for us. But the reality be, it's tough out there. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. I might start hating on some people because I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. So the message of the teaching is let's not hate. Let's not do that, because often we don't have the strength to see ourselves and to see where we can direct our attention in the most productive way through anything, any sort of trial, any sort of tribulation. Because what is the alternative? A spiral into justifying evil and the tragedy of generations of trauma. And so he's teaching that the essential spiritual power one has even in dire times, and that is to love also your enemies and those who persecute you, because that is where the real power is. How are you to deal with forces out of your control? Do you give it up to God, or do you let it change and transform and warp and twist your spirit? This seems to be more the question here when he says these lines. And I love the next line, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. I interpret it as there are higher forces at play here. And in dire times, often the great teachings get thrown to the wayside and people direct their attention to their small circles. But Jesus is saying, no, We are all children in the grand cosmic design of things, and there is actually opportunity in these times to fully become a person of God. And then he flips it, saying that this is where the power is and where all the power comes from. In the lines, for he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. Now, I gather from this, the power he is talking about is kind of a neutral power. Those who do evil, the sun will rise on. Those who do good, the sun will rise on. So you kind of get the picture. The sun's gonna rise either way. Where does one want to be when it does rise? It seems to be more the question here. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Imagine operating only on a two-dimensional flat surface. Now, imagine adding a third dimension to that flat surface. And you have a number of more possibilities to work with. In the passage above, Jesus is teaching to the crowd, highlighting the important fact that it takes the extra effort in order to achieve results. New possibilities, more options, all of the things that come with an extension outside of yourself. Which is something we all kind of feel. We all kind of feel that if we operate only in our own circles, we aren't really doing anything in this context. The context of there's a lot of people who may need help. And then, of course, there are also deeper levels to not doing anything outside of your small circle, such as ignoring when there are chances and opportunities to provide something, chances and opportunities to answer that call. But Jesus keeps it simple here by asking the question, what is the difference? Because to only operate in your circle, it's the same as what everyone else is doing. And he's teaching us that that won't get anywhere. It's equal to nothing. Jesus doesn't have to say this. You can forget him. Take him out of the picture. Whatever. Because a person has the ability to sense this themselves. Am I wrong? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Perfect in this context means complete. The meaning gets changed in the translation from Greek to Hebrew to English and so forth. So it's important to return to the original source in order to be precise, because what is lost in your standard King James Bible version is a lot. Now, it doesn't make a ton of difference if you are only looking for the general drift of things. However, if you are so tied to the translation of perfect here, this meaning of perfect creates a gap in our thoughts between the teacher and the message to learn from. We get the vibe that perfect is not realistic. It's not down to earth because nothing is perfect. And this is unfortunate because the teaching was meant to be relatable as it was during his time. So you can see how these small details make a big difference when the message seems to be so clearly that it is possible, that you can do it. It is attainable to align as a people to God. And in your pursuit, you will see that completion. That completion Jesus was talking about. The translators do the best they can, but it takes that extra effort to find precise meanings if you want to be close to the original teachings. These teachings and sages, or these teachers and sages and creators all throughout history are begging for a new updated look in good faith. So here the message is to be complete. Seek completion. We are reminded of the phrase, as above, so below. This is another way to interpret both Jesus, Moses, and even Paul. Each of them are saying, strive to be in alignment with God. And they are also saying that it is possible and even necessary.